All right.
Hey, Josh Alley. How's it going today? We are back in business in this beautiful mansion.
James, welcome back to the crib, my guy.
Hey, come here, man. Hey, hey, buddy. How have you been
Dude.
today, man? It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon. It's a
Yeah.
little cloudy. I was just at the beach earlier. It was
Uh-huh.
amazing. But now I got my tan.
You gotta be camera ready.
Yeah,
That's the whole thing.
I got my salt water, exfoliating my skin, and I'm ready to talk about some God blessed football today because I got nothing better to do.
I would say you are glistering. You look like a pregnant lady.
Wow, thank you so much. Your compliments are really hitting my heart in different places.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, God.
You're so welcome. But with that being said, today, James, we are going over the NFC East. So for everyone out there, that is the Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, and Commanders.
Yeah.
Kind of going through like we do every week, going through some of their free agent acquisitions, their draft picks, and they kind of just what we believe is kind of like their ceiling and floor maybe, or just some expectations for this upcoming season.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan to me. I don't think it'll be as long as a video because we don't have a lot of trades to talk about, but this is, again, we're continuing the tradition of looking at these divisions. Ooh, you see that? Say that 3 times fast. But with that being said, like I said, we appreciate, everyone who joins the live, comes and hangs out with their friends. And let's have a day. Let's talk about one of the most crazy, unhinged, just all-around divisions in football as usual. That is the NFC East. I don't know if you want to start or if you want me to start, but that is your choice, my friend.
I will go ahead and I want to start. I'm going to start with a team that has a lot of potential, made a lot of moves this offseason, and that is the Giants. That's
New York Football Giants, baby.
Yep. So start off, the Giants finally moved on to a new head coach. They had Brian Daboll for a little while. He was an unproven guy. He was an offensive, mastermind for the Bills. They go and they get John Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
So with John Harbaugh, you have a few different things. He is a Super Bowl winning coach. That's probably the biggest reason why they went out and got him.
Yep.
You rarely have chances where you have a head coach stay with one team for, 10 to 18 years pretty much.
Yep.
So it's another big thing. He's a guy that has built culture. He's gone through different eras of quarterbacks, Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson. He's been able to win at the highest level and get consistently competitive and be up there for as long as they can.
It's like a Mike Tomlin kind of guy.
Kind of exactly like a Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
There are a few little things about him, and especially over the last few weeks have kind of come out. Biggest note is just his intensity in practice, which has led to various injuries already.
Well, that's what's happened so much in Baltimore, and that's why they were so frustrated because of how he runs his practices intensely. And from playing football, and I do too, is that you practice all the time and it's important to get your reps in, but also you need your rest. And it's the off season. You can't afford to lose guys. I think they've lost 3 guys.
Yeah, 3 or 4 guys just to season-ending
injuries in practice.
And that's the thing. And that's with, we've just gone through OTAs, which are optional and they're not full padded.
Yeah.
So there's so many rules now in the league, which is supposed to help prevent these long-term injuries from players.
Yep.
Yet they're still happening with the same head coach.
Yeah.
So
that's very, very concerning. And I know the Giants dealt with a couple injuries last year. I know Jackson Dart was hurt for a little bit. You obviously Scatterbo.
Andrew Thomas as
well. So it'll be interesting to see how they will deal with that. But besides the point, yes, I do agree. I think it was a hire everyone saw coming, but this is probably the best. Whether you like it or not, he's a great coach. It's his issue primarily has been he just has not been able to get over that wild card and divisional hump with some extremely talented teams. But you're right. He's probably the first Giants coach in a very long time. You had to deal with Daboll. Do you remember Joe Judge?
Oh.
The Patriots wide receiver coach.
Oh my gosh.
I honestly, it's very hard to remember these guys because they've taken a lot of swings and misses.
Pat Shurmur was there.
Pat Shurmur, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a guy who has the expertise, has the experience of a winning culture. And this was a Giants organization with Brian Daboll. Yes, he was an offensive mastermind, but that whole team was very fractured. I mean, you remember through some of their weeks what they had a lot of disgruntlement. Players were very frustrated. You have all these crazy
Hmm.
personalities, which is a good thing, but just like any other team, and you probably know this through Jalen Ramsey, is,
Yeah.
you can have guys with good personalities and they're
Mhm.
fun and they add good team culture, but sometimes you do a 180 with that, it could mess up your whole team dynamic.
Especially, and last year was such an interesting year for the Giants. There were times on the team where they were excellent. I mean,
Mm,
they were putting up 30 plus points consistently, and that was with three different quarterbacks
yeah.
starting multiple games. So it's a whole thing where they truly just needed a identity. And I think
Mhm.
with somebody like Harbaugh comes in, he has shown that ability to bring in his own identity and
Yeah.
really at least make this more of a competitive team.
Yeah.
So part of that is bringing in his own guys.
Yep.
So the Giants went on and they did get Isaiah Likely from the Ravens on a 3-year, $40 million deal, which, it is a lot of money for a guy that's never been a tight end one. But
Yes.
he has consistently shown his ability to be really effective in the pass game. And this is a incredible upgrade to the tight ends that they have on their roster now.
That is true. Yeah. I think it's people are really banking on, because he's one of those guys where he won't do a ton of crazy plays, but the plays he makes, you're like, he moves really fluid.
Yep.
He's got a great body, great size. He's got a good catch radius. There were definitely times where they were like, why are we keeping Mark Andrews when we have this young guy on the bench? He finally gets his chance to start. You know, I like Theo Johnson, poor Theo Johnson, but
Yep.
I do think it is an
Penn
upgrade.
State alum.
Yeah.
No, exactly. But they definitely do. They go out and get the best tight end on the market and add a lot of competition and a lot of experience into that room. After that, they do make a few other moves. They re-signed the right tackle, Jermaine Elamar. Great re-signing. He had a fantastic year last year. He is a little bit older, but with how the team is structured, you can't go wrong with adding, above average, even elite offensive lineman.
Yeah, he was the guy that it was, well, I think it was Joe Shane, might have been his when
Hmm.
Saquon Barkley left, they brought him in from the Raiders, and
Yep.
he's been a fantastic signing and a stalwart, one of the better right tackles in the league. And so I think it's,
Exactly.
obviously you want to bring back the guys that the guys that can compete. So,
So, especially with so many injuries to that offensive line consistently,
mhm.
you go and get your bookend right tackle. Love it. They do also bring in Tremaine Edmonds. This is just an upgrade to the linebacker core. That is 3 years, 36 million. Tremaine Edmonds, oh my gosh, he's 28. He might be the oldest 28-year-old I have ever seen in professional football.
That's actually crazy to
Because
think
remember, he
about.
came in as like an 18-year-old.
Yeah, was he in
He, but
the like the Roquan Smith draft?
oh man, I don't know. I mean,
He
I
was in
think
the
it's a
same draft as his brother, Terrell Edmonds, who's,
yeah.
like, been out of the league for, like, 4 years.
Oh, he's bouncing around a little bit, but I believe he was in that
Yeah.
2018 draft class. He's been there for about 10 years. But regardless of that, he comes in and immediately adds veteran presence
Mhm.
to the linebacker group. Bobby Okereke obviously had a very down year
Yeah.
and has just been consistently regressing. And you're bringing a guy that might be a little past his prime, but also had 5 interceptions last year.
Yeah, he was still a good player, just a lot of big contract value for him. Yeah.
Exactly. Lastly, they obviously traded away Dexter Lawrence, and with that, they tried their best to bring in some defensive tackle talent and depth. That includes DJ Reader, 2 years, 12.5 million, and Shelby Harris, 1 year, 3 million. Both of them, they are where they are. Neither player is Dexter Lawrence,
Yeah.
but it might, put a little band-aid over the massive depth hole that they have right now. So with their free agents, you could tell their idea was go and get veteran guys for the team that desperately needs identity, desperately needs players that come and just contribute
Yep.
day one. So you can argue they might have overpaid for a few people, but considering some of the massive contracts this offseason, I'm proud of this Giants team for not going, too crazy.
Yeah.
Now come to our draft, which I love their draft. I love this Giants draft. In the first round, you have pick 5. Arguably, the guy with the highest ceiling comes
Mhm.
in and falls to number 5 with Arvell Reese,
Yeah.
linebacker. So obviously, with Arvell Reese, the biggest question mark with him is what positions he's going to play. And I think with how this team's set up with your talent of Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau still there right now, your depth on edge looks pretty good. You don't necessarily need Arvell Reese to come in there day one.
Yeah.
You look at their linebacker group, obviously Tremaine Edmonds, you have Micah McFadden back there. Arvell Reese is like slid in right into that linebacker 2 role, And so far, everything I've seen, he's done really well. I still think he's a guy that early downs is going to be that linebacker too, kind of work with stopping the run, situations like that. And they're going to use him a lot, kind of like Nick Herbert with the Steelers right now. Use him a lot in blitz packages, line him up all over the field.
Yeah.
Think that's an excellent pick. Then with pick 10, the Dexter Lawrence trade, they go and get Francis Mauigoa. Arguably, to me, I think this is the best offensive lineman in the draft. He played offensive tackle, especially right tackle there in Miami. Obviously, Jermaine Elmore coming back. He's your right tackle. So it looks like Francis Mauigoa is going to be playing one of the guard spots, most likely right guard with John Runyon Jr. playing left guard. So you're adding depth offensive line, especially a team that's dealt with so many injuries. His biggest, enemy per se, offensive line is Daniel Falale. So
don't even say that name, man.
So Francis Mauigoa can't beat out Daniel Falale at right guard.
We have a big issue.
Then we have an Evan Neal situation going on. So regardless, out of those two picks, they made a few other good ones. Malachi Fields, that's just your big time. He's about 6'4", wide receiver from Notre Dame. Then I want to point out is Colton Hood, corner from Tennessee, pick 37, first pick up in the second round for the Giants. This is a guy that is younger. He's a younger corner. Corners is a big need for the Giants. He's not necessarily my favorite. There's a lot of technique issues that he has, but he is fast. He is physical. He is young. There's a lot of potential, even if he doesn't necessarily have to start day one.
Yeah.
So I like that. Plus, and you already added to a lot of depth in that cornerback room.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a little golf clap. That was a great job. Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to point out. You talked about free agency, and I do agree with you. I think that they got some really solid assets, but they didn't go as crazy as other teams. I do think, obviously, free agency overpay guys. Isaiah Likely and Tremaine Edmonds, it's a lot of money for guys that just, don't have but they didn't go out. They didn't spend a crazy amount, but they spent at positions that they needed.
Yep.
Dexter Lawrence you knew that was going to happen. You go and basically get a right guard replacement because, like you said, Daniel Falale, cannot have him. No disrespect to him, but
it's Daniel Falale.
You can.
You immediately know
there is no excuses.
Yeah,
there's nothing. You were thinking that you have your franchise quarterback in Jackson Dart. Malik Neighbors will be back fully healthy, although there are some issues with him.
His knee, for sure.
Right. You have even without Dexter Lawrence, you have Brian Burns, you have Abdul Carter. Now you bring in Arvell Reese, and like you said, the question is, where does he fit in that defense? Because you're getting another guy who a lot of people said was kind of similar to Abdul Carter, a hybrid guy who's more of a pass rusher, but still might need some development. And then you said, this is interesting because this draft is so similar to the Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau draft.
It is very similar.
2 top 10 picks. You get
2 picks.
The arguable best offensive lineman and the best edge rusher in the entire class.
If you remember, you look back at that draft class, there were reports coming out from the Cowboys. Those were their 2 top pick prospects were Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
So their division rival got it. And both players, one is barely staying in the league, and the other one has been in so many trade rumors and is eventually
just a decent
is a average edge rusher who will most likely end up getting replaced this year with Abdul Carter.
Yeah. So that's definitely something to watch out for. But I think it's going to be, again, there are a surprising amount of replacements because one, you let a bunch of guys go, but also you have a lot of guys that just have not lived up to the standards that they were. I mean, the perfect example is Colton Hood and Deontay Banks, right? Deontay Banks, I mean, for Giants fans, I'm really sorry. He's not been very good. Arvell Reese, it's probably Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal for Francis Mauigoa.
Yep.
The other question and concern I really have is over the New York Giants skill positions. This skill position group, I like Isaiah Likely, but obviously I really have to see him be in a tight end 1 role. But it's the receiving core too, right? Jalen Hyatt has not worked out. They did bring in Calvin Austin, who's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, they did bring in Darnell Mooney.
Yep. They also brought in OBJ is back in New York. They brought Juju Smith-Schuster. They brought Braxton Berrios all in the same day.
Yeah. So I think that screams desperation.
Yep.
Right? That screams desperation. But, and like you said, with the Malik Neighbors injuries, the question is who's going to make that step up and who's going to be that security blanket for Jackson Dart if Malik Neighbors is not 100% healthy? Because right now you have a bunch of
you have a bunch of wide receiver 3s to potentially wide receiver 4s.
Yes. And you have an unknown tight end room and even the running back room too. Yeah, I like Scannabo, but I don't think he's a Derrick Henry. You get every single touch, right?
And here's the thing, though. Even if he is a Derrick Henry type of level of talent, there's no perfect formula of him coming back fully healthy from his injury. There's still a lot of question marks there as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the Giants have a really good opportunity with a proven coaching staff and making some rock solid capital, maintaining what you have to make a push in a division that's so volatile. But the Giants are going to giant.
Yeah.
And so I do have questions. I just have questions. And I know there's a lot of hype going into them, but I am a little unsure of just who's going to make those jumps. I mean, I could even say the same thing about Abdul Carter.
Yeah.
He had 1.5 sacks last year. Like, yeah, maybe you might say his game was more than just sacks, but also like, yeah, he's been a personality haggle too, with Jackson Dart. So can Harbaugh take this whole new team and whole new system and condense it into a playoff caliber group? Because I think the expectation for the Giants is to at least make a wild card game and maybe come second or first in the division.
No, and that's a bottom line. This team has expectations, especially when you go and get a proven coach like Harbaugh, and the same issues that occurred last year are still showing up on their current roster.
Yeah.
This is the last point I want to make about this team, but you even look at their kicking situation. They went through so many last year. They go and they signed Jason Sanders early on. They have already released him from the team.
And the guy that they replaced him with has been doing terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter where Harbaugh is, kicking situations is just going to follow.
Poor Tyler Loop. But yeah, a lot of expectations for the Giants.
Yeah.
This is definitely a team hopefully on the rise. But like I said, this division is always the most chaotic because it's like you never really know who's going to win.
Yeah, exactly.
But with that being said, we're going to go to quote unquote America's team. On my side of the ball, a team that I have a very strong love-hate relationship for, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboy Nation, stand up, because there's a lot to talk about with them.
Yeah.
I'll start with the main thing, the George Pickens situation. The franchise tag is there, but the question is, what do you do in the future? I know Wani is a great receiver, but he's also George Pickens, and George Pickens is a bit of a diva.
And he's already made comments about him not sure if he's going to show up for the next phase of camp. So
and the Cowboys are putting out money to guys like Quentin Williams, to Dak Prescott, to CeeDee Lamb. So it's like, how much money do you want to give him? I'll say a couple things about their free agency. Pretty good, I would say. The main thing is this defense, right?
Yep.
You have some developments. I think the Quentin Williams trade was a big move for them. Thank you, Cowboys, for getting Micah Parsons, but after that happened, that defense fell apart. So there's a lot of changes that they made. Couple of really small secondary signings just to kind of add some bodies into the room. Maybe not necessarily the best players in the world. Guys like PJ Lott, Jacoby Durant, but they're guys that you can say, hey, rotate in rotation. They're rock solid. They're rock solid. They're not corner 1 or corner 2, but if you need them in a rotation, they can,
And that's the thing, though, is with this Cowboys team, they could potentially be cornerback 1 or cornerback 2 with how they are.
Yeah. Well, especially with how Deron Bland was playing last year on that $90 million contract.
Exactly, and releasing Trayvon Diggs last year.
Yeah.
So there's a clear path almost of either of those two guys, or I guess really Kobe Durant, to potentially become cornerback 1. Or even, if you think all the way back to Josh Butler from the XFL or the UFL at that point.
Yeah.
He was injured this past year, but when he did play 2 years ago, he showed more promise than Deron Bland.
Yeah.
So there's a true path for a complete revival of this cornerback room.
Yeah, well, obviously the secondary is, and the Trayvon Diggs fall off that needs to be studied. But their offseason, I think, was pretty good. Like I said, it's a lot of depth signings on the defense,
Hmm.
get a 3 tranche layer for your defense just in case. But they made a couple trades. And one big signing, the big signing, Jalen Thompson for a 3-year, $33 million deal. It's about a 28-year-old safety, underrated for the Arizona Cardinals. But again, their safety room was really bad last year.
Hmm.
And I think this is a great replacement for really good contract value, too. I think this is a really good upgrade for them. The trade, again, for the Green Bay Packers, getting Rashawn Gary for a 4th-round pick.
Yep.
For Dallas, I thought this was a win-win. Rashawn Gary, you're taking on a lot of his contract, which is not very good for where he's been, but I think he makes to be a good rotational edge rusher. He's got a lot of energy. He pairs well with Kenny Clark, who you already have on the team. But the only thing I'd say is you are taking on a lot of cap space with that. But again, maximizing your edge rushing depth is extremely important. You did trade away Osa Odigizua, but that's likely because you wanted to get rid of some of that cap. And also, you have Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark in there. They'll probably be fine without him.
Right.
Although I did like Osa. I thought getting him for a 3rd-round pick from the Niners was good, but for the Cowboys, you get a 3rd-round pick for that.
Exactly. And you free up some money because that interior defensive line was taking up so much of their salary, which they desperately need for players like George Pickens.
Yep. So going to their offseason, I liked it, right? You didn't spend a crazy amount of money. You got some really good depth pieces. I really like the Jalen Thompson signing. The Rashawn Gary trade adds depth within the edge room, but you looked at this at the same time you looked at this offseason and you said, this cannot just be it for what they're going to do. Right. So we go to the draft, and this draft is a whole thing now. So the Cowboys do Cowboy things, they always, the one thing I will say is they always just get crazy 1st-round picks,
Yeah.
And that happens again. Caleb Downs, right into your lap. You get the best safety prospect and arguably for most of the consensus, the best player in the entire draft. Just the most pro-ready, NFL-ready kind of player. Fantastic instincts, great athleticism, can play all over the place, is a great box safety.
Yeah. And that's the thing about him is with consensus around the board, his floor is all pro Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yeah.
Of a smaller guy that is so physical and has these amazing ball skills that can play literally all over. And that's what we're going to see a lot with him this year. He's going to maybe start a little bit in the slot, closer line of scrimmage. Certain looks, he's going to be in that deep zone, deep blue back. And he might even play some snaps as outside boundary corner.
Yeah. So when you take an original safety duo, I think it was a Malik Hooker, and I don't even know who the other guy. Donovan Wilson.
Yep.
And you replace that with Caleb Downs and Jalen Thompson. I think that's a fantastic upgrade in the secondary. I'll highlight 2 or 3 more guys. They took 3 edge rushers in this draft class, which is really surprising considering they have Donovan Ezeraku and they also brought in Rashawn Gary. Malachi Lawrence is the next guy. This was a guy who rose up a ton of draft boards due to a fantastic combine, was kind of an under the radar prospect, but his production really showed. I like him. I think this definitely was a high pick to use on a guy like this, but he has production, he has a good skill set, and he has the athleticism. But I think the obvious question, it goes to all draft players, but especially with the concerns with him is will it translate to the big leagues?
Exactly.
So I like the pick. You get an upgrade. A lot of people did compare him to Donovan Ezeraku, I think.
Yeah, and I'm on as well.
Yeah.
And that's because of they're a little bit undersized. They have that speed. Donovan Ezeraku went to Boston College, Malachi Lawrence, UCF. Both of them are not the biggest schools, so it's not the biggest consistent competition. But it's one of those type of players where the front office fell in love with them, and regardless of where the consensus board is, they went out and they got their player.
Yeah. So again, could be, you're looking at your possible future Micah Parsons replacement. You never know. And then the final pick, I guess I'll highlight with the 3rd-round pick they acquired from the Osa Odigizua trade, they drafted Jayshon Barham from Michigan. This is a guy pretty different, big, lanky, great arm length, super, super physical, high motor edge rusher, but just needs development through and through. And I think that's a really good compliment for teams drafting is you develop all these edge rushers. You get guys who, might not be the most athletic or be or are athletic and have good production, right? And you put those guys at your forefront, but you also take the guys that might have more higher upside
Yeah.
and more athletic ability. I mean, they drafted LT Overton, who's definitely more of a bigger bodied run stopping edge rusher who still, again, is a guy who needs a lot of work.
Yep.
But I think, again, you look at what teams are doing with edge rush groups, right? You got to get, instead of it's, hey, you get 2 to 3 starters, it's 4 to 5.
Yeah.
It's a double deep group. And I think that's what Dallas wants to do is, hey, maybe we can't necessarily replace Micah Parsons, but we're going to take a ton of shots and just get a really lethal pass rushing duel because we trust our interior defensive line and we've secured help in the backfield.
Yep.
But, and the other thing too is, you look at this, they drafted 2 offensive players. They really made no moves on offense because their offense was so good last year. And so in Dallas's position, again, another team with big expectations because your offense was so good last year that you feel, hey, we're going to put all our chips on the defensive side of the table. We're going to say, hey, we don't have to do anything with this offense because, with Brian Schottenheimer, it's all good. He's going to continue to do great things. Dak Prescott's still playing really well. We still have our receiving core. We brought back Devontae Williams. But we're going to overhaul the defensive side of the ball and make that into a hopefully formidable force, but enough force to where, hey, we can win games if we outscore our opponents by a lot. I kind of experienced that with Green Bay, where we're in the Rodgers era where he would just drop so many points, but your defense couldn't do anything, and you're hoping that you're getting enough from your defensive side of the ball to kind of close the gap a little bit. I think they did a good job with it. I'm sorry I'm talking so long.
You're good. I got some good points to combat you.
But I will say a couple questions. One, can the offense maintain consistency, right? That's a big question. You did not make any moves on the offensive side of the ball. You're expecting them to stay the same. And I guess number 2 is I have 2 concerns with the defensive side of the ball. One is linebackers, inside linebackers. Overshown is back from injury, and he hasn't played a full season, but in his reps, he's looked really good and has a lot of potential. And you traded for D. Winters, but it's D. Winters. It's not a fantastic linebacker, but it's a good replacement for a guy like Kenneth Murray because yikes. But the other thing is, too, is the cornerback room, right? Deron Bland's still your cornerback 1, and he was not good last year.
He was really poor.
You brought in Kobe Durant, Deion Kendrick, Devin Moore, but those are 2 rotational corners and a 4th-round corner. Now, I'm not saying I don't like the guys, but I really like the safety additions. I just have concerns with that cornerback group.
No, exactly. And I want to throw a few points because you had mentioned, especially with draft picks in their defensive line, every NFL front office and coaching staff have to decide when it comes to the draft if they want to take guys that have shown production or guys that have shown intangibles.
Yep.
So it's a perfect example because a guy like Malachi Lawrence has shown production at UCF. And you look down and a guy like LT Overton has the intangibles.
Yeah.
So it's a situation where there's not necessarily one correct answer. I can name you examples of both.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But intangibles, the top guy I think of, for example, is like Danielle Hunter, defensive end for LSU, as his last season playing, he had 0 sacks.
Yeah.
And now he's one of the premier edge rushers of this decade and one of the most underrated. You look at guys that have strictly production without as much intangibles. I think like Terrell Suggs, for example.
Yeah.
He's a guy that was supposed to be a top 5, top 10 pick and then bombed his combine. And so he fell down, was a lot less athletic than he became, and he was a defensive player of the year, one of the greatest edge rushers in NFL history.
Yep.
So there's perfect examples of positive and negatives for both. It is a situation where there is no perfect answer for intangibles. Or compared to production. So they definitely did, and they swung for the fences with their defensive line, going 3 different guys that are a little bit all over the board, which I think with how your defensive line is situated and that depth at edge, you just have to hope somebody rises to the occasion.
Yeah.
Regarding their cornerback room, obviously Deron Bland, after that big contract, he dealt with some injuries and took a massive step down.
Yeah.
You trade away your longtime starter, Trayvon Diggs. You go and get Kobe Durant, who was never a full-time starter for the Seahawks, so you're kind of banking on that. PJ Locke was a rotational safety for the Seahawks.
Yep. The Broncos.
Broncos, yes. And then obviously Caleb Downs, you're banking on him being that, generational prospect that
I mean,
for
he's the
safety.
safest player they have in that. In my opinion, you can make the argument he is the safest player in that entire secondary, and he's a top 15 pick rookie.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm right there with you. This team, and we saw last year, there were games where they were blowing people out. There were games where they, were in overtime against the Giants
Yeah.
with Russell Wilson. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they necessarily have done enough to be able to win in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, your defense is everything. Look at the Seahawks this past year. It's defense, defense, defense. This Cowboys team is not built for, the tough times in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they are on the right step. I hope that by the time they are able to figure out what they officially need for defense, I hope it's not too far from what they have in Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Because his contract is up there. He's getting $60 million a year, and he is over right around that 30-year-old age. And I could see a situation where the team's ready for success, and he's no longer the gunslinger that he is right now.
Time is running out. Time is
Exactly.
running out. I
Exactly.
like that. I like that. Wow. Kudos. Kudos to you, man. I mean, yes. How about them Cowboys, Cowboy Nation? But yeah, well, I guess I'll have you take it away.
Yeah, so my second team is the Eagles. This Eagles team, the biggest news coming out of it is, of course, the fact that they just traded away AJ Brown. And we talked about that last week, how that
Yeah.
trade looks, how both this team and the Patriots now look considering their offense, things of that nature. Their free agency, they didn't have a lot of money to play with, and therefore they didn't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
Their biggest contract based is Bradley Mann, punter.
That's crazy.
It's their
Wow.
biggest contract. So obviously, if you have question marks about your offense, you want to make sure you have a good punter. Their biggest contract for AAV, for average annual value, is they went out and got Tariq Woolen, which Tariq Woolen is not necessarily the corner that he maybe once was with the Seahawks.
Yep.
But he is a fantastic cornerback too, especially with Quinyon Mitchell being cornerback one. You go and get Tariq Woolen, who is still to this day probably one of the fastest corners, and he's 6'4",
Yeah,
6'5",
crazy athletic quarter.
and he doesn't have to be cornerback one.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, for 1 year, $12 million, I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, I think because we talked about in the season was there were two options. He wanted a major extension, and I think they definitely saw. Yeah, he has a lot of upside. Obviously, freakish like a perfect build corner, has production, but also just has those moments where you're like. And they saw that a lot in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even though they won the Super Bowl, he had some moments where you're like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of what scared teams off a little bit. But at the same time, for a Vic Fangio defense to have Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and now Tariq Woolen in your secondary, that's a crazy secondary group, but a crazy upgrade. It'll be interesting because this is a prove-it contract.
It is.
And he's in the perfect opportunity to make a lot more money after this because he's on one of the best defensive defenses in the entire league.
And after this contract, he will be 28. So he still has a few years left where he can be a serviceable corner one, corner two. Regarding that, they didn't make any other big-time, big-name contracts. They try their best to go and get a few wide receivers. Marquise Brown, Elijah Moore. Other than that, they try a little bit at defensive end, since that's still such a huge issue with this team.
Yeah.
It's a consistent rotation of players. AJ Espinenza is one player they went out and just got. Arnold Edebeki is one player. Joe Tyrone. So there's
very hard names to pronounce.
So there's a few players they want to try to get for depth pieces, but there wasn't any of those big time names that we're almost so used to this Eagles team making.
Yeah.
But that's a little different when it comes to the draft. Obviously, you trade away AJ Brown. You did go and trade for Dontavius Wicks. That's obviously not the biggest name.
Yeah.
But round one, pick 20, you go and you steal Malachi Lemon, wide receiver.
Sorry, Pittsburgh fans.
Oh my gosh.
That sucks, man.
It's disgusting what they did to them. Malachi Lemon to me is, yes, he is strictly a slot wide receiver.
Yeah.
But to me, I think he is the best wide receiver from this draft class. I think you have the least amount of questions about him when it comes to his production on the field.
Yeah.
So they went out and they were able to get him. He will come in and immediately be their slot receiver, which is a position that they have consistently rotated. In the past, it's been Josh Doxson. Before that, remember Julio Jones was there at one point.
Yeah, he was. That's right.
Being their slot wide receiver. So they allow Malachi Lemon to come in. Devontae Smith can be on the outside. Other outside can be, I guess, Dontavius Wicks for now. After that, round 2, they go and get Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt. This one I was a little perplexed about because they did re-sign Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
It was a short-term deal. Eli Stowers is very similarly built to Dallas Goedert in terms of they're almost strictly the receiving tight end, which it is what it is. It's not necessarily my favorite, but they go and just get another weapon for Jalen Hurts. 2 picks I want to talk about, that is, they go and get probably the biggest guy that we've seen at the Combine this past year, and Markel Bell from Miami, the left tackle. This guy is humongous. 6'9", 360 plus pounds. Huge guy. He'll come and just be a depth piece. Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson are both older players at this point. So it's just a player that they are going and adding a lot of depth.
Yeah.
Lastly, I want to talk about their 7th round pick. This is from their International Player Pathway Program. Defensive tackle, UR Bernard. This is the guy that went viral for being such a freak athlete at being over 300 pounds.
He looks like he's actually insane.
Exactly. Now, here's the thing about the way that they draft him. Do I think that he's going to make an impact on this team? Absolutely not. Now, with him being from, I know what you mean. But here's what I'm going to say. I love this pick for one reason. It's a 0 risk pick. Because he was drafted from the International Player Pathway Program, he does not count towards the roster.
Really?
Yep. Every team is allowed 1 to 2 players, I believe, from the International Player Pathway Program.
I did not know that. Wow, that's actually really interesting.
And it does not count against the roster. So they go and they grab the guy with the highest potential, and there's no risk at all.
Yeah.
So it's one of those drafts where, like, I think overall this offseason, I think it's fair to say that this Eagles team got worse. You can argue that the on-field issue with A.J. Brown, him being away from the team, allows it to increase with camaraderie and chemistry as well. But take that away, A.J. Brown is still one of the better wide receivers in this game, and there is a reason why they were able to have so much success with him there as their main target.
Yeah.
So I think I would be surprised if this Eagles team doesn't necessarily increase in wins as they did last year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there are definitely some questions. I think you look on the positive side, right? You did a great job trying to replace AJ Brown. Now your strategy, I think the Mekhi Lemon swindle was great, right?
Yep.
He's a really good receiver. A lot of people had him as the best receiver in the entire draft, but he's a rookie. So instead of going out and getting a guy the same caliber as A.J. Brown, which also I really like how they were able to get a 1st-round pick from it.
I do too.
I'm very surprised that that's what it was because, I mean, again, I talked about this when we said A.J. Brown. Yeah. It's the exact same trade, but he was like 4 years younger.
And that's the point that I mean is, like, even regarding his on-field antics, his value and his play on the field is still worth a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, and it's really surprising, but there are a couple of things. What I liked, going out getting a lot of receiving help, right? You get Dontavian Wicks, Mekhi Lemon. Eli Stowers is basically a big-time slot receiver.
Hollywood Brown as well.
Hollywood Brown, you add a veteran piece in there. You still have Devonta Smith. Defensively, again, Tariq Woolen going there was really surprising. Also, I don't think you mentioned this, but, although they did lose Jalen Phillips, they did bring in Jonathan Grenard from the Minnesota Vikings. Guy signed a big contract with Minnesota, but had to let him go to the cap space. You got him for 2 fourths. He's 28, 29 years old. He has 2 12-sack seasons under his belt, but last year he did have 3 sacks. So
and they went ahead and gave him a new contract.
Yeah.
So it's not a situation where you have to worry about, once he plays, you got to go and re-sign him.
Yeah.
They went in and they inked him in for a new deal.
So he is your green light number 1 pass rusher on this team. I think it's a solid replacement. I don't think they had to give up a lot for him, but it is definitely a risk. Things that do concern me, right? One is though I liked how they did this receiving core, it is again very risky, right? Because you're basically saying, hey, we're going to substitute a really good player with a bunch of mediocre players and
Yep.
guys we don't know if they're going to produce. So that's definitely a risk, because usually if you do that, maybe one or two guys will hit, but a lot of them won't, right? I think the Dontavian Wicks deal was a little bit of a reach, and giving him a $12.5 million contract to me is a little crazy for his value.
No, for sure.
Again, you're expecting Devonta Smith to make that jump to be your alpha dog wide receiver, which he kind of was last year with all the AJ Brown antics.
Yeah, and he's had multiple 1,000-yard
Yeah.
receiving years. So it's not like he doesn't have that ability. But even so, what he's seen is we want that next step. We want that Heisman like he got in college.
Yeah, exactly. And there are two sides to this. One is defensively, can they maintain what they've been doing? And also, can this pass rush finally get something going now that you have Jonathan Grenard in there? Because you have just been throwing guys in and out, trying to make draft picks. Nolan Smith hasn't developed into the player that you want to be. You need a good pass rush with this team.
Yep.
Offensively, it's the same old question. Jalen Hurts, please just be really good and not just good.
Yeah,
you know,
be consistent.
Be consistent. Do the little things. Make good passing plays. So I do have a lot of concerns about this team. I think this team, out of all the teams in this division, has the shortest window of opportunity.
Exactly.
They have a lot, and I mean a lot of players who I could definitely see retiring or moving on in the next 2 to 3 years. I think the age is definitely a concern. Right? Saquon, you could say Saquon Barkley's not getting younger.
Yep.
Both their tackles, Lane Johnson, Jordan Malone. I mean, Landon Dickerson almost just retired.
On my defensive line, you got a little bit of impact from Brandon Graham, who was previously retired. So the entire team is right there on the thread. Zach Bond's also over that 30.
Yeah, Zach Bond's over 30.
So it's definitely a very short window of opportunity that they have.
And I think the thing is, right, I think and the other part of it is, and it's just like the Rams, is it's money. You know, yeah, you couldn't pay Jalen Phillips, but you went and got Jonathan Grenard, and he's a pretty expensive guy too. You're spending, I think it's almost $26 million on 2 one-year contracts.
Yeah.
So you look at the guys that they have to look out for in the future, right? Jalen Carter's probably the biggest one.
Because they did re-sign Jordan Davis, who they decided to prioritize instead of
a lot of your edge rush group. I mean, you have Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, who are probably going to want massive contracts.
Yep.
Did Devonta Smith sign an extension? I think he did.
He might have.
And so yes, cap is a big thing with them too. And then the question of Jalen Hurts. To me, this team is running out of time to be back in that spot where they were. I'm worried that they kind of passed on from it, where they were 2 years ago. I still think they have a lot of opportunity. I look at this team, I think they have the best roster out of all the teams from top to bottom.
Yeah.
But I think that they've gone through a lot of drama, a lot of issues. I know the culture is probably not the best. I mean, that Jalen Hurts, you get AJ Brown out there, but I've heard Jalen Hurts is a nutcase in himself. Nick Sirianni's not the best cool-headed type of coach.
Right.
You have regressions with Saquon Barkley from where he was last year, but that could be just because of how crazy he was the year before. So I'm pointing out all the negative stuff, but the bottom line is this team is a good team. I think they did a good job addressing some of the needs on their offseason with the budget that they had. But similar to other teams, this is a team that is not going to stay the same way for a very long time.
Yeah.
They've had that chance. They won a Super Bowl because of it. But now you're kind of coming to pass where, hey, you're going to see who steps up, who doesn't, and who you're going to have to let go. And this window is shortened. And I just am really worried how they're going to take those next steps, especially on offense, when you lose your premier receiver at AJ Brown.
Yeah, exactly. And to go back real quick, Devonta Smith did sign a 3-year, $75 million deal.
Okay,
averages of $25 million. That puts him at the 15th ranked highest paid receiver. He is one below Jameson Williams, who just got a contract, and one higher than Nico Collins, who got one a few years ago.
Okay.
But regarding this team, and exactly how you put it, it's the age. I think you can arguably make a statement that within the next 2 to 3 years, this core roster is going to be either off the team or retired.
Yeah.
You made a great point of both, both tackle prospects,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. You can make the argument that Saquon Barkley could potentially retire within the next few years. Dallas Goedert just resigned. So, I mean, yes, he resigned, but he is over 31. There were question marks about him potentially retiring.
Yep.
Zach Bond is up there in that age. There's a lot of players on this team as well that have such a short window. I think this is a situation where you have high-end talent on your team. You have some guys that are really up there, but it's the depth pieces that you're really hoping can step up within this upcoming year, especially some of the younger players like Jahad Campbell, for example. Your
Mm-hmm.
defensive line, you mentioned Nolan Smith. Jalen Hunt is another player.
Yeah.
Like, these are guys who you are expecting that next step. Cam Jurgens as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kelsey's replacement. So there's so many instances where you are hoping for the player to step up, and it's just a situation where we are still waiting. We haven't seen that next step from these
Yeah.
players.
Yeah. I think that, fly Eagles fly, but I don't know how long they're going to be flying for. But I do think, yes, I think this is a well-constructed roster. I think the Jalen Hurts questions are still there, but this team still has a really strong chance to compete in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
They just got to get their stuff together because this team could crumble really fast due to all the drama that's around them, even without A.J. Brown. But with that said, we got one more team, and another team that is probably the most roller coaster out of all the teams, maybe the most roller coaster team in the league, and that is the Washington freaking Commanders.
Yeah, man.
What are you doing? Going to the NFC Championship one year, being the worst in your division, and getting a top 10 pick the next year.
Well,
I've not seen that really since the Rams.
Here's the thing about this team. It goes like this. Ready? It's a straight roller coaster.
Yeah.
You had the highest high. What, they went 13-4.
I think they were maybe.
I think they
were.
It was either 12 to 13 wins with a rookie quarterback, a brand new head coach who Dan Quinn hasn't, been a head coach since the Atlanta Falcons. So it was a situation where you had this extreme season, which had some really lucky, plays throughout. And then you were at the highest high. You're like, okay, this is perfect. We are going to go and get all these incredible veterans. Bobby Wagner, Von Miller, Deebo Samuel. Never works. You're like, okay, let's rerun it back with these older veterans that are ready to win a ring. Start of the season, Jaden Daniels goes out with a big time injury, and then the entire season falls apart.
They just weren't good, though.
No,
they weren't good.
And that's the thing. It wasn't just, and that's why the point I made for their first season was how many lucky plays that they made.
Yeah.
The Hail Mary, if you think about it, against the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
There's so many times where those games were one or two plays away from completely switching the season, and that's what we saw the next season with an unlucky team and unlucky, health chart.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so you go into this, and let me give this saying. I'll just say this real quick.
Yeah.
This tip for GMs out there, coming from us on a podcast.
Uh-huh.
Whatever you do not make it your entire offseason to go and load on as many veterans as you possibly can, expecting good results, because that never works.
Never works.
So with that being said, because it's a big pet peeve of mine, they did a lot of stuff. They overhauled, they made a ton of moves, some good, some bad, but honestly, good offseason, right?
Yeah.
Really, you look at this Commanders team, you wipe away all the veterans. They had a lot of holes across all the roster. You bring back Laramie Tunsil on a mega extension, absolutely justified, one of the best tackles in football, blindside protector for Jaden Daniels.
100%.
You look at their free agent signings, they had a lot. So we'll start with a couple. Your boy, Cale Von Chason, bringing him from the Patriots on a one-year deal. He is basically your pass rush specialist.
Yeah.
Your third down kind of man, the role he really thrived in New England.
Yep, that weak side speed rusher.
Yep. Akello Witherspoon corner, not the best corner, probably going to be a starter for you, but is a solid, decent player who could step in and, be a contributor better to what they have.
What they had with Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah. So bring in Chigo Okonkwo. This one's really interesting.
Yeah.
Chigo Okonkwo's always been really fascinating to me. Really similar, at least to me, and Isaiah Likely, where he maybe doesn't make a ton of crazy plays, but when he does, you look at him and you're like, wow, how is this guy not a really, really good player? And I think part of that was just, hey, you're on the Tennessee Titans and you're starting tight end for the Tennessee Titans. So hopefully he's a little bit more of a security blanket for Jane Daniels, adding that receiving aspect. Because, and I will talk about this, that's a big concern of mine, is the receiving aspect of it. Leo Chenal, I know this was a big one for you. Big fans of it. 3 years, $30 million. Good value. You know, a guy who, again, wasn't a full-time starter, but when he played, he was really good. An all-over-the-field linebacker, gets his chance to start. It's an immediate upgrade over Bobby Wagner, and he is a young player. I just freaking, bring in Rachaad White, compliment to Corey Krosky-Merritt. He's your running back too now.
Or, could potentially be running back one that's still a big question mark coming into this season is their running back room.
Yeah, you bring in Tim Settle, defensive tackle, run-stuffing defensive tackle. But really, the big one is the riskiest one, and that is similar to the Jalen Phillips. That is Odafe Owe.
Yeah.
4 years, $100 million. Wow. That is a lot of money for a guy who has been super up and down his entire career. He's gone through, he came into the league as a guy, very high athletic upside, guys we talked about.
Right.
Would go a year with 2 sacks, then had 10 and a half, then, stayed with 2 sacks with the Ravens, struggled, goes to the Chargers, absolutely transforms himself, does an amazing job, gets, I think, 10 plus sacks in a season, goes and signs a mega extension.
Yeah, I think it's the thing where I think in like 6 games he had like 6.5 sacks in 6 games.
Yeah.
Something like that.
He's your alpha dog pass rusher. I think, again, this was a really big need for the Commanders, was immediate pass rush. You get 2 guys who their specific specialties are pass rushing numbers, getting pressure to the quarterback. So I like that. It's a lot of money, yes. It's guys who have been up and down their entire career, but when you have money to spend and you desperately need it, you have to make those moves. So I liked it a little. I mean, it's very similar to Jalen Phillips, where I say, hey, this is a big risk contract, but you kind of have to do it. I think for the Commanders more than Carolina, but these guys are super, super risky assets. And then the final one I forgot to mention, this was the one I forgot about, and another one I really liked, very similar to Leo Chenal, was Nick Cross. Coming from Indianapolis. Immediate upgrade in the safety room. This was a player under the radar, but really improved himself over his rookie contract and became a quality defensive starter for the Colts. So I like the offseason. I think they made 2 or 3 really risky moves, but I think they also had some great value signings. I think Chigo Okonkwo, Leo Chenal, and Nick Cross, really good value signings, instant upgrades at positions of need that have high upside. So again, you have a lot of needs, but you have a lot of money. Go out and spend it on guys that you think can play football, make your roster younger, but also upgrade. So,
and that's the thing is, I think they did both. I think you made a great point of Leo Chenal, Chiga Okonkwo, and Nick Cross as players who have been in this league for a little while, who some of them may not have been players that were full-time starters or even players that were utilized throughout the entire season, like Chiga Okonkwo. But all 3 of them have produced at very high levels. Then you go to the other players, Clayvon Chason and Odafe, who at times through their careers have shown flashes, but now you're giving them contracts and you're banking on those flashes being long-term season careers. So it's a situation where you gave good contracts to players that are going to be able to produce, and then you gave massive contracts to players who you are banking on the fact that they weren't in the right situation or they weren't necessarily the edge one, and now they come in here and have that opportunity. It's a lot of risk, which seems like a very common thread with these Commanders off seasons. But regardless, they definitely did get better. And if you have a healthy, just a healthy team in general, I was trying to, go by position, but if you have a healthy team in general, you've seen what they can do. And you have to have some sort of excitement towards this team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do agree with that, definitely. But there is still, you're basically overhauling all your old talent, trying to get into some of the young talent. So I like it. I like what they've done. Their draft, different. Not a lot of picks, but what they did, I liked. First pick, number 7, you go Sonny Styles. Man, alpha dog linebacker, again, premier top line linebacker in this class.
This is a guy that definitely fell to them.
Yeah.
There were reports of potentially Sonny Styles going number 2 to the Jets.
Yep.
Pretty, as of the last few weeks of the draft. So this was another pick where they allowed the player to come to them.
Yeah, again, similar. I think it's a little bit, you get Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, and I think Sonny Styles fits right in the middle of those two guys.
All three Buckeyes.
Freakishly athletic, fantastic size for a linebacker, has production, can move around and play different positions, but there's still some concerns with his development as a full-time. And, he will take on a big role, but again, for the Commanders, it is, and it's crazy to even say this, it's a hell of an upgrade versus Bobby Wagner.
I know, I hate to say it. And I'll even say this, with somebody like Sonny Styles, is he can kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yes.
We've seen that work out in a lot of situations with linebackers.
Well, and that's what the Commanders like. Frankie Luvo's kind of the similar thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And, this is a huge comparison, but the story of him as a player, his size, the position change, it's a lot like Brian Urlacher.
Yeah.
As a former safety. And they are both 6'5", huge, huge players. And especially with this Commanders team, they have a really good linebacker group of all three versatile athletic backers in Frankie Louvu, Leo Chenal, and Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
So if you're able to maximize their versatility and athleticism, this can be from one of the worst linebacker groups last year, which is so hard to say with someone like Bobby Wagner, to the most versatile athletic linebacker room in the entire league.
Leo Chenal, Sonny Styles, Frankie Louvu, they all kind of wear that same crown.
Exactly. They all very similar style players.
Yeah. I mean, but I think it's a really good value pick for what they wanted. I'll mention 3 more picks because they had a third and a couple late round picks. Antonio Williams, wide receiver out of Clemson. I thought this was good value for him in the 3rd round. He's basically your starting slot receiver for what they have. Yeah, it's a 3rd round wide receiver, but he's a playmaker. He has really good skills. He's very, very physical, very, kind of a Dan Quinn-esque guy who will just go nonstop. But there are definitely some concerns. But again, this receiving room needs as many bodies as possible. I think he was a really good value pick for them in that position. Joshua Joseph's kind of the same thing. Him falling in the 5th round. Big guy, super athletic, very stiff, developmental pass rusher.
Yep.
Can play inside and out, but he's basically going to learn underneath Odafe Owe, Caleb on Chason, and the rest of that defensive line group. But again, adding bodies. Same thing with the last pick I'll mention, Katron Allen, Penn State, going in the 6th round. You're a 3rd down back, right? You have more small, shifty running backs like Ja'Cory Krusky-Merritt, Rachaad White. You need more of a big bruiser kind of guy. Maybe not the most crazy directional, shifty player, but a guy on 3rd downs can make plays for you. And I think Katron Allen fits that bill well. So with what they did in the draft, I think it's good. I think you get premium starters in the premium starter with the 1st pick, and you fill out holes and depth in your roster with the last few picks. So again, good draft for the picks that they had. This is where I have I'll go into the Commanders a little bit. Yeah, this is one that I could see going either way. I could see him going back to the same form because of how good Jayden Daniels was at that peak. The fact that they've added so much on the defensive side of the ball. They have rookies that are hopefully making developments like Trey Amos and Josh Connerly. And you still have good players on both sides of the ball. And you've addressed a lot of your holes. But I also could see it where, hey, this just isn't working out. A lot of these guys fall flat on their face. They can't really keep it up. They still need a couple more players. My concerns lie with a couple of positions. One is, again, as we talked about it, the pass rush situation. These are 2 really risky signings, guys who are specifically designed to pass rush the ball. Can they make that work in a division that has really good offensive lines?
Especially. And they still do have some pieces. Dorrance Armstrong is still there, former Cowboy. He's been arguably their best pass rusher as of the last few years. But other than that, I mean, they did trade for Oza, which is, a fantastic player to come in. But as you're saying, this team still has a lot of holes, especially they have young players in that secondary who the potential is there. Trey Amos has potential, and some of what he's shown last year was incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Question is, can he stay healthy? Can he produce a whole year?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions there. I'll just jump in with their draft. Obviously, he didn't have a whole lot of picks. Sonny Styles was an amazing player, how they kind of came up to them. But you look at Antonio Williams, to me, he is a smooth route runner, especially in that slot. He reminds me a lot of Shaquille Shakur for the Bills.
Yeah, yeah.
Very smooth route runner. And then lastly, Jonathan Josephs. He's that very big, physical, athletic edge rusher.
Yep.
I know I love playing player comps to people even just in the 5th round, but he reminds me a lot of Tyree Wilson from the Raiders.
It's very good and very bad at the same time.
Former
Yeah.
7th round pick, high potential, yep,
With the 4 things that we haven't done in a little bit.
that's all right.
But I will say, yes, I do agree. The main concern I really have with this team is the offensive side of the ball,
Yeah.
specifically this receiving group and this skill position group. Terry McLaurin's your guy, right? But he is over 30 and has dealt with injuries.
And has had contract issues.
Behind him, it's Luke McCaffrey, Antonio Williams, De'Ami Brown, and Jalen Lane.
Yeah.
So there are definite concerns. Terry McLaurin is basically your number one guy. And yeah, he's got a lot of baggage. He's got a lot of carry. And the guys behind him are either unproven or just not really good football players, right?
Yeah.
You did bring in Chigo Konku, who's a receiving tight end. But again, is your receiving tight end going to be your number one option, even if Terry McLaurin gets hurt? Right? What's going to happen then? The same thing with the running back room. Yeah, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a lot of people liked him because he was a 7th round pick.
And he
very inconsistent.
Yeah, and he showed at times, he showed some really good games last year. I think he won the NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year award, I think like 4 separate times. But there were games where he had, under 15 yards as well.
Yeah.
Directly afterwards. So I think a huge part of this team is they need to stay consistent.
Yeah.
And that goes from, you need to stay consistent from a coaching standpoint. They need to stay consistent from a health standpoint, or figuring out their offense, or whatever it is. This team is so many question marks.
There are a lot of question marks. And I even have question marks over Jaden Daniels. And is it like, and I don't want to jinx this or anything, is this an RG3 kind of situation? Is this he's going to be healthy? And I think that comes too with, and the last thing I'll mention is another concern of mine. We talked about it. I do have concerns. I have concerns with all over the board.
Yeah.
Because again, this is a really risky team. This team has a lot of upside, but also a lot of downside. And the final thing I'll say is, I think it really comes down, and I know we say this a lot, to the trenches.
Yeah.
Protecting Jaden Daniels, there were some issues with the offensive line last year. Can Josh Connerly make that step? Can those interior guys make that step?
You lose Tyler Bidas, their center, so that's more question marks.
So your guy, Nick Allegretti, is going to be stepping in. You don't know how that's going to go. And then, as I mentioned earlier, defensive side of the ball, can they get after the pass rush? So this team, the most volatile of the whole group, this team could either be the best or be the worst. And I think there's not a lot of in between with this team. I think there are a lot of concerns with how fast they fell and how hard they fell.
Yep.
But I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that they did make some good moves and brought in some really good players. I just don't know if this is necessarily a year. I think maybe one more year under the belt of a lot of these new faces and getting this team cohesive, and maybe another good draft and some more offseason moves, they might make a push. But this team definitely has a lot of question marks around it going into the season.
Yeah, I think my last point about this team, because we talked about it for a little bit, if I'm Dan Quinn, I'm shaking in my boots right now.
Yes.
And here's the situation. 2 years ago was your first year of coaching. You had this fantastic Cinderella story, almost making it as far as you did. Last year, you had injuries, inconsistencies, things like that going to happen. The biggest point to me, and we talked about this last year when it happened, we had it as one of our weekly losers. It was Dan Quinn and that medical staff.
Yeah.
Not Daniel Jones, I keep on doing that. Jaden Daniels got injured early on, rushed back from it was an elbow injury, because remember that thing, was bent sideways.
Yes.
Came back early. You saw that he wasn't the same player. And then it was a situation where the Commanders were, that following week, were down so much to, I might have been a division game at this point.
Yeah.
And they were down almost 30 points, and with a whole quarter and a half left, and he didn't get pulled. Jaden Daniels did not get pulled, and there was a situation where he ended up getting hurt at the end of that game, and then that was the end of his season.
Yeah.
So it could very well become a Robert Griffin III issue if you cannot be smart about the health of your quarterback.
Yep, I do agree. Yep. Oh, yeah.
So, with all that being said,
Yepper depper do, man.
we've gone through the 4 teams. We do this as many times as we can remember. We go through the 4 pillars of our division. So, which team in the division had the best offseason? Kind of they upgraded the best. Who had the worst offseason? Who we think is going to be the best team in this very competitive division? Who's going to be the worst?
This one might be the hardest one we've done. And you want to go first?
I'll go first. With all 4 of these teams, I think the team that from head to toe got better in the offseason, I think I am going to put the Giants on this.
Okay.
I think as much as they were able to bring in really good playmakers, I also think it goes into coaching staff. Brian Daboll did his best with the situation that he was given, but you bring in a veteran head coach that has been there before, that's been part of multiple rebuilds, that knows how to play a young, athletic quarterback like Jackson Dart. I think we're going to see a much improved Giants team, regardless of some of the health and potential in that defense.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go through all 4. My most disappointing offseason, so the team that didn't get better, but maybe not have didn't get much better or maybe even got slightly worse. I think it's hard to point anywhere than just the Eagles at this point.
Yeah.
And I think mostly that is because you're forced into a situation where you had to trade arguably your best player on offense. It's never going to be a good thing when that happens. And like I said, they did try and replace some of that production with rookies and a handful of wide receivers. But I don't think that they're going to surpass the level of winning that they had last year.
Yeah.
The last 2, who's going to be the best in the division? These are
the tough ones, man.
I love the potential of the Giants. I think I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go with the Cowboys. They didn't really upgrade their offense, but they didn't need to. If they are able to maintain and keep George Pickens, and with the talent they did end up adding to that defense, I don't see how they don't have that best chance of being first place in this division, especially with the talent on special teams as well. And Brian Schottenheimer, I mean, I think he answered a lot of questions last year that we had prior to the season. So really, I think this Cowboys team has a chance to be the best in the division. Worst in the division, man. To me, I'm going to go with the Commanders. This is hard. We just talked about all their additions. I think we've seen a lot from Jaden Daniels' rookie year.
Yeah.
But the little amount that we saw last year, even prior to his injury, it was a lot worse than we were expecting. And with how this team's constructed, especially with the added, so-called talent on edge rusher, this is a team that would benefit a lot from being up in games where they're able to really focus down on pass rush.
Yep.
I don't necessarily see that happening a lot. I think there's still too many question marks about offensive line, wide receiver, running backs, just on the offense alone, or this team's not going to be able to compete with some other teams in the division.
Yeah, I like what you said. And it's so funny that I honestly was thinking a lot of that in my head.
Yeah.
Best team, and I think you made a really good point because I was going to say the Commanders because I just think top down, they just plugged a lot of holes on both sides of the ball more than any other team, in my opinion.
Yep.
But I think I did not factor in the coaching change of the Giants. And I do say the Giants are the team that improved because you had a good draft. You got premium players. You went out and signed guys on both sides of the ball, but it's also you got the best coach in the coaching cycle, a proven winner. And I think that is the biggest offseason win probably for any team, really.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest offseason wins. Least improved, yeah, I would go Philly. I wouldn't say that they regressed a crazy amount. I just think it's more of an argument that all the other teams improved a lot more than Philly did.
And they had to make a desperate move.
And they had to, and they did get a lot of new receivers, but you also did trade away a top 10 receiver in the NFL in A.J. Brown. So I would say Philly. I think there are some concerns with Philadelphia, but I don't think they got a lot worse. I think they kind of maintained and stayed the same. Best in the division, yeah, it's kind of hard for me to say it, but I would go Dallas. I think that just the team in general, I think, like you said, the offense structure is there, and you put so much into the defensive structure, and I really do agree to the fact that Brian Schottenheimer answered a lot of questions because we mutually thought that he was the worst coach in that head coaching cycle.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Like, he wasn't a good coach in the first place. But if anything, he turned out to be one of the biggest surprise coaches because he managed his side of the ball so effectively.
They were the number one offense
and brought a lot of improvements to the team. Thanks, Matt Eberflus for ruining the whole thing. But I really do think they have a good chance of taking this division. We talk about it's just so hard because this is I think the only division that I could see any team winning it.
Yeah.
I think they're even like the NFC South. In my mind, I would say like, hey, I don't think that they're gonna win it. I don't think I like a hot take. Like I look at it, I'm like, I don't think the Falcons are going to win the NFC South. For this division, I could say, yeah, I could see them winning this division, and it'd be really close. The worst team, I would pick the Commanders too. I just think their timeline isn't stacked up compared with the rest of these teams. I think they hit it really hard and have a lot of catching up to do. And I am concerned with Jaden Daniels' development with his injuries. But I mean, really, like I said, I think the Giants have a really close chance, and I really do think that getting Harbaugh is the biggest offseason move because of that complete overhaul of a coaching change. So yes, NFC East, you are done. Yeah. We have finished you off. Yeah. You are no more.
Yeah, I want to throw some very quick last little points. And this is the big thing about this whole division. And James, you said it perfectly. Is any of 4 of these teams could win it. We've seen very high highs from all 4 of these teams. Eagles, obviously the highest high of winning the Super Bowl. We also saw a very low last year with full regression of just about everyone on the team, especially running back, especially offense. You look at the Giants, they have high potential. They are also the Giants. Commanders, that's the biggest change I've seen in 1 year while keeping the same quarterback. Yes, he's injured, but still the same. You look over the Cowboys, they obviously had the best offense last year. And you can make the argument that their biggest question marks considering offense now is, can you maintain what you have with a big contract and a quarterback like Dak Prescott? Can you deal with the situation, the contract situation of George Pickens? And there's a few question marks about the offensive line, especially that left tackle. If Guyton's going to play, if Tyler Smith's going to play, what that situation is going to look like. But they go and they upgrade their defense. You can truly say that they upgrade their defense than last year. You go and get Jalen Thompson, Caleb Downs, obviously. You go and you just try to add depth to that cornerback room. You go and get D. Winters. Like these are, and Malachi Lawrence, more defensive line. But these, you might not necessarily see a huge statistical difference of this defense, but you will be able to tell and see a brighter future for it.
Yeah. We're breaking it down one piece at a time. We're kind of running out of things to say, but with that being said, Josh, that concludes another episode of the Goal Line Guys, getting it done once again on a beautiful Saturday. We appreciate everyone tuning in on the live. We enjoy the company. We enjoy the comments.
Yeah, 100%.
I got ear to ear smile right here. But Josh, another great day of talking about football.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
Of course, James. And for everyone out there, make sure we have weekly clips out Monday through Thursday. We also might even have some sort of surprise video clip coming out this week that we might kind of add to this dimension of our podcast. But regardless, thank you for everyone coming out. And without further ado, James, it's nice having you here, bud.
It's good having you too, brother. You have a great weekend.
And you too, James. And everyone out there, have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Peace.